Quiet quitting may not be a new phenomenon, but it now has a name and it can be really great and it can be really terrible. So let's talk about that a little bit. I'm Dr. Hochman, the medical matchmaker. As a family medicine physician and huge physician advocate, I help doctors to find the jobs of their dreams. I've done quiet quitting twice in my burnt out physician career. So there really are some great things about quiet quitting, and there really are some pretty bad things about it. So let's talk a little bit about both of those and go over it and kind of see maybe there's work-life balance, maybe there's a quiet quitting, not quiet quitting balance that we can all find. As physicians, we have such a strong passion for what we do, and we feel so strongly that we don't want to make mistakes. We want to take amazing care of the patients. We'll do anything to take care of someone. And sometimes that's to our detriment. But, when I think about the first time that I did some version of quiet quitting, um, it really actually was to my benefit. The first time I did some version of quiet quitting was after I had my second kiddo. So at that time, I was like most physicians are, where I would go to work, come home, chart for hours and hours on end, and then go to work again the next day and repeat. So, at that time, I was exhausted. My kid somehow never napped during the day. She didn't sleep at night. She has grown to be the sweetest, most amazing kid, but holy moly, she was a nightmare baby because I was very tired. So add that on to working a whole lot. And well, you can imagine how I felt. And so, the version of mild quiet quitting at the time actually was helpful and set me up in a pretty good position to be able to practice medicine without burning out for years afterwards. And what that looked like was not triple, quadruple checking all of my notes 1,000 times, putting a little bit less detail while still including everything that's relevant. But what I ended up doing was taking my charting time down significantly. And so instead of working all hours of the night and working on my off days and, obviously not sleeping, so, I must have been far less efficient as it is. But that actually was really helpful because I learned to really prioritize and be more efficient in how I was charting and how I was going through my day. Now, I understand when you're seeing a cajillion patients and a whole bunch of them are complicated, um, that's very difficult to do. But I definitely think that just this mild version of really just learning to be a little bit more efficient can be beneficial. It's really important to take care of your mental health, and especially for physicians who we were burnt out and having a tough time before the pandemic. And the pandemic hit, and it's just way worse now. So, I think that type of quiet quitting, if it's really just mild and important, where we're still getting everything done that we need to get done, but maybe not as thoroughly as possible. So long as we're taking good care of the patients, we are helping people and not hurting people, and we're charting everything that's relevant. Yes, we would love to all chart 99214s instead of 99213s because it's obviously quite important to be financially viable. But at the expense of our mental health, maybe it's not so good. Maybe we can push back and say, hey, it is not okay for me to be seeing this many patients. And even if that means, unfortunately, taking a little bit of a financial hit, it's okay. But it's okay to say no, and it's okay to know your limits, and it's okay to scale back a little bit. And the more of us that scale back, the more that that'll be commonplace. So let's take care of ourselves. It may be good for you to really reassess your values and reassess what your true priorities are and your true values are and live according to those. And it may surprise you. It may not be, climbing the ladder or working long, long hours. It may be decreasing your hours a little bit. It may be seeing less patients. It may even be a new job. Who knows? But I think that there's an important part of this that we can really take note of and make the changes we need before we get past the point of no return and leave medicine entirely. Now, the downsides of quiet quitting can be pretty large. I'll tell you about the second time that I did a real quiet quitting. And this is when I was also burnt out for my second time. But the second time, I would say it was more the moral injury variety of burnout, more so than the actual burnout, working long hours kinds of variety. This was when I felt that my voice wasn't being heard. There were giant changes that had to happen for patient safety, to be able to run the practice correctly, for employee satisfaction. I mean, there was a very large change that needed to happen, and no matter how many times I told my leadership and I told administration that these changes needed to happen, nothing happened. And it was really it was very unfortunate because I was so extremely happy before all of this went down. And um I mean, it got to the point that I was just miserable and had to leave. But before I left, that's when I did the absolute bare minimum. I mean, even going in to see patients was painful. And I know that we've all been there, but I went from having, if a patient came in with a total zebra, I would research for hours and hours and hours and hours on end until I could figure it out. Um, to kind of going in and okay, I don't know what that is, let's refer and see if we can figure it out. And but I really lost that passion um for treating people and figuring things out because I was so unhappy at work. So I would go in, see patients, do notes, go home, and all the other tasks that needed to be done, they were just very, very, very bare minimum. Now, that needed to happen probably for me to realize that it was time for me to say goodbye. um, but it is not a nice feeling. And I think that if you're considering quiet quitting to that level where you're doing the absolute bare minimum, as a physician, you're probably extremely type A and you probably take a lot of pride in your work. So it's more than just quiet quitting is doing the bare minimum. There's so much behind it. Why are you quiet quitting? And how does quiet quitting feel? It's pretty unsatisfying to do the bare minimum when you're a physician who obviously cares a ton. You went through 11 plus years of school, studying crazy long hours, going into debt, all of this to quiet quit, really, it's not a nice feeling. And it's probably a good wake up call to say, oh my goodness, if this is me and this is where I'm at, what am I going to do? The other downside of quiet quitting, the more tangible downside would be if you were to leave a position after quiet quitting, your references may not be quite as good. Instead of saying, hey, this is Dr. So and so, and they will do anything for the patient and anything for their coworkers, and they're awesome to be around. And they get all their work done on time, and they were so awesome, and they come early and stay late. And, of course, these are all the come early, stay late. I hear myself saying that as someone talking about mental health. So I realized the irony there. Um, but, thinking about that, your references are not going to be as good. And also, if you are looking for career advancement, which means, working towards partnership or working towards hospital administration or leadership, you're not going to get there if you do the bare minimum. You have to go above and beyond. And we're physicians, let's face it, we're used to going above and beyond. I do think that, as I spoke about earlier, there are some merits to quiet quitting, but, you know, know that it's a risk that you're going to take, and rather really, really think about it. Think about the benefits to you. Think about the downsides to you. And even just notice, maybe you are quiet quitting and don't even realize it. But if you are, I hope this is a wake up call to you to really think about it and really say, what's going on and why am I doing that? So if you're considering quiet quitting or already doing it, I hope that this is a wake up call to maybe look for something else. But not just that, look within yourself, figure out exactly what you want out of your work, out of your life, and go out and make it happen. I'm Dr. Hochman, the medical matchmaker. I help doctors find jobs that really more closely align with our value systems. So if I can help you, please reach out. I'd love to help you out. And let's fix healthcare together.